I was being shown around a big old house that had served as a convent for a group of nuns that had taught in a parish school some years ago. And the house was basically deserted at the time, and each of the rooms where the sisters used to sleep was empty. But as I looked in, I noticed in every room, on the wall, there was a sink. And above the sink, what we always called the medicine cabinet. You know, with the door that opened, and inside you'd keep your toothpaste and toothbrush and that type of thing. But when you close it again, the front would basically be a mirror. But in this case, the front of these medicine cabinets was just a plain piece of white metal. No mirror, no reflection. And after noticing that in one room after another, I commented on that. I said, look at that, there's no mirrors. And the person guiding me said, yeah, that group of sisters, when they built this house, they wanted to make sure that nobody succumbed to the vice of vanity. So they limited the number of mirrors in the house. And they did not have their individual mirror. And I started thinking to myself, I wonder how often I look in a mirror in a day's time. And I'm going to ask you the same question. How often do you look in a mirror? How often did you already look before you came today? Have you ever noticed some people really dread looking in a mirror? They don't like what they see, so they avoid it. Others, on the other hand, look a lot, frequently, and over, and they want to make sure their hair is just so. Some people, I think, look a lot, hoping that they'll see something better each time. And if there's no mirror handy, they'll look at whatever reflects. I see that here all the time on a windy day when people come into the church. We have a lot of glass doors and glass walls, and so people find a place to quickly look to see if there's a reflection of themselves. We do it out in the parking lot too. How many times have you ever looked in at a window in a car, especially it's dark inside, and you look at the reflection of yourself, secretly hoping there's nobody sitting inside that car? And we all know the story from mythology of Narcissus, who looked in the pond and saw a reflection of himself and fell in love with himself. He fell in love with the image that he saw. Of course, nowadays, with modern technology, there's other ways to look at ourselves. I was in the doctor's office. They had done a little bit of surgery on my face, and I wanted to see what it looked like. And I said to the nurse, you have a mirror? And she said, use your phone. I said, what? You have a camera? Yeah. How about a selfie? And only then did I realize that she and I were from different generations. We look at ourselves a lot because we think in looking we're going to see who we are. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. And not only with an actual mirror or even a selfie phone, we have to see who we are in the bigger sense. Who are we before God? Who are we in our own hearts? And so we have a challenge today to look at ourselves for who we are. We all know people who see themselves differently than everybody else sees them. I've known people who, I remember this one person in college. He saw himself as clever and smart and good looking and God's gift to women. The women did not agree with him. And sometimes we think that we're better, and we see ourselves like we're virtuous, and we're doing all the right things. But have we really looked at ourselves? And that's what's going on in this gospel reading today. Because Jesus, in a sense, holds up a mirror to those men who brought this woman before him. It's a very powerful story. We've all heard it before, but very powerful. Jesus is in the temple area. This is Jerusalem. This is where everything's going to transpire in the next couple of weeks. He's in the temple area. and he's teaching, so there obviously are people around. And then this group of Pharisees and scribes just come barging in, dragging this woman, and they set her right in the middle. They did not care about that woman one way or the other. She was a pawn. They were only using her as an excuse to try to trip up Jesus. And it was a trick. Should we stone her or not? And if he said, yes, stone away, he would have been guilty of going back on his own words of compassion and forgiveness. Just last week we talked about the prodigal son returning and the power of forgiveness. On the other hand, if he said, no, don't stone her, they would have said, you're disagreeing with Moses and the Old Testament. So rather than take either side, Jesus chose not to answer. He scribbled in the dirt. We don't know what he wrote. In a sense, it doesn't matter. But they persisted. So that's when he said, and this line is part of our modern day jargon, let the one without sin throw the first stone. That was the mirror that Jesus held up to them. Look at yourself, folks. Are you really so good after all? What do you see? And it's interesting, it says it started with the elders, because the elders probably had a whole lifetime of sinfulness, a whole lifetime of pretending they were better than they were. And Jesus got through to them. And so they started to leave one after another. It's really interesting. Jesus did not condemn the woman, nor did he condone her actions. He told her, don't sin, but you're forgiven. He also did not really condemn the Pharisees or the scribes. This is interesting. He did not condemn them. He gave them an opportunity for conversion as well. And that's what's happening to us. You see, when we truly see who we are, that's when great things can happen. St. Francis of Assisi was asked by his followers how to be spiritual. And he said the first step is know thyself. Know thyself. And I think that means know who you are. Know your strengths. Know your weaknesses. Know your vulnerabilities. Know your sins. And know that you are a child of God. And it's when we become conscious of who we truly are before God, then God works within us and great things happen. But there is a danger. Even in looking in a mirror, we just see what we want to see, or we see the same thing over and over. So it's not just looking, but looking with new eyes. And that's what the challenge is. Last week I heard about what's called the infinity mirror. And the infinity mirror is that when you have two mirrors and one reflects what's in the other one and back to the first one and back and forth, it goes on to infinity. And because I am so dedicated to doing my homework before I give a homily to all of you, I tried it out. I really did. And it took two large mirrors for it to work. And I had to stand in the middle because otherwise I couldn't tell. And I looked, and the first mirror was what I normally see in a mirror. And then it reflected in the back what I was seeing in the front. And that in turn was reflecting what was going on. So I saw the same image of myself over and over and over and over, back and forth to infinity. But each time it reflected smaller. I think there's a lesson there too. The problem was, it was the same image over and over again. Sometimes that's all we see. We just see ourselves the same every time. And even if we have a mirror, we don't open our eyes to truly see it. And if we hang around the same people all the time, we still don't see the truth. The gospel today is calling us to be honest before God, honest before others, honest before ourselves. Who are we? And who is Jesus talking to? And how can we be true people before God? And when we accept that, then we can be forgiven and move on.